And welcome back again to The View from Here, Behind Enemy Lines, ladies and gentlemen. We're pleased today to have a returning guest, Dr. Carole Lieberman, MD, MPH. She's known worldwide as America's Psychiatrist and the Terrorist Therapist.
That's true.
Dr. Lieberman is a board-certified Beverly Hills psychiatrist, forensic expert witness, and five-time award-winning author of Lions and Tigers and Terrorists. Oh my! How to Protect Your Child in a Time of Terror. She's devoted her career since 9/11 to helping families build resilience in the face of terrorism and global conflict. Dr. Carole, welcome back. I understand you were in Israel when Iran started attacking recently.
Well, thank you, first of all. It's good to be back. I was in Israel in October, and Iran wasn't bombing at the time. But, it's funny. It was actually during the peace process, but we had planned this trip. I'm with an organization called Planet Therapy. It's a very small group. We were the first ones to go to Israel. What the group does is it helps people. It does free therapy, volunteer therapy for people in Israel and Israelis who are in different places in the world. But this was the first time that we went to Israel. And it's funny, the peace process was happening, such as it was, but we had planned this trip for like months. So we didn't just go because it seemed like it was going to be more peaceful. It just so happened that it was. But there was still, there were, of course, lots of signs of the war. From bomb shelters all over the place. Like in my hotel, for example, there was a bomb shelter on every floor. There was a certain part that was reserved that you were supposed to go to if the sirens rang. And in the streets. And I had one of the interesting experiences. I mean, of course, it was incredibly interesting and I hope helpful. I worked with people who were just regular citizens in Israel, the IDF, the families of hostages, and then a group called Zaka, which is the group for the people who they go out into the battlefields and they gather the parts of Israelis that are left there. So it was really it was an amazing experience, a very fulfilling experience. And one of the moments in particular that was interesting was sort of towards the end of the trip. I was having lunch in a restaurant in a street in Tel Aviv, and it was a street where there were no cars that would go in anymore because they had it set up that on each side were restaurants, and then the tables from the restaurants were actually like on the sidewalk. So cars couldn't go in. And everybody, like if you didn't know that there was a war going on, you wouldn't know it because people were laughing and eating and,
Living
talking.
normal lives.
Yeah, it looked like normal lives. And then all of a sudden, a siren came out, and everything stopped. It was like everyone froze. And it was, all of a sudden the realization, I mean, not that they ever lose it completely, but it was like, of course, PTSD triggering that same fear reaction. And it was just so interesting to see the contrast from 1 minute, it was looking like everybody was okay. And then the next minute, it was like just so on the edge, and then after a little while, when the siren stopped, people went back. But you could tell that it just exposed the fear that was underlying.
Right. Yeah, that's a very tense way to live. My girlfriend has family in Israel, and she calls them several times a week to make sure that they're okay. Roman, that's her cousin's name, told her that he's never seen anything like this, and it's worse than it has been in the past.
Yes. October 7th was worse than anything in the past. And
Well,
that is
aside from October 7th, I'm talking about the current bombing of Israel.
Yes.
Yeah. And I understand that people, once you hear that the missile's been destroyed, you still have to wait a few more minutes because of the debris that falls and could kill you.
Yes.
You have to stay hunkered down.
Fact, I was just reading about a couple who was killed just today or yesterday because they didn't get to the bomb shelter in time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I worked in a high risk job. I worked as a substation man, worked on high power, 138,000 to 240,000 volts, and I lost a number of people that I worked with. So it was a high risk job. But the thing is that when you're in a job like that, you can't focus on the worst case. So we actually were relaxed unless there was an emergency. Then all of a sudden, our training kicked in. And I was wondering, is that what you saw? Did you see all of a sudden you saw people's training and experience kick in really hard and they were doing what they had to do? They didn't panic or anything, right?
No, I mean they didn't go run. They didn't run screaming from their tables, but and I didn't see people panicking at any time actually. But it was just always there in the background.
Yeah. Tough. Very tough.
Okay, let's get to what parent. A lot of people are, even children, are exposed to what's going on through the media. And social media. They are exposed to what's going on in Iran right now, in the Gulf area. So, how can parents talk to children about Iran, terrorism, and the global conflict without causing panic?
Well, first of all, they need to realize that they have to talk to them about this. A lot of parents don't want to talk to their kids about terrorism or now about the Iran war because, they think, oh, well, I don't want to scare my child. But they
Mm-hmm.
don't realize that their child, even really young children, they see something on television, they see something online, they hear something on the radio. They hear things from their friends in school. Like my book, Lions and Tigers and Terrorists, Oh My, How to Protect Your Child in a Time of Terror. Starts for kids from 5 up because at 5 years old, at least, you are in school, you are in kindergarten or pre-kindergarten, and you hear things from your friends, and they might have an older brother or sister who knows more even than they do, and they like to tell their sibling, and they like to tell the other kids, to make it seem like, oh well, to kind of scare them in a way. Oh, this is what I know, and you better be careful, or things like that. Just to just the same way as ghosts. I mean, just to have and so the kids are going to be have been finding out about this anyway, and the problem is that they, whether it's from the media or from a child in school, they're hearing confusing stories. I mean, even for
Mm-hmm.
us adults, we listen to the news and read the news and all of that, and yet it's even confusing for adults what's really going on because, well, in some channels they purposely make it confusing, but
Or
so
lie.
need to realize that they are scaring their children more by not asking them about it, talking to them about it, explaining about it, because then the kids now feel that they have two things to worry about: whatever's going on in the war and terrorism, and that they can't trust their parents to tell them about it.
Hmm.
So that is a problem. I look at it like the birds and the bees for the 21st century. That, the birds and the bees, that's an uncomfortable conversation that parents have to have too. And because these are facts of life. Well, same way terrorism, the war are facts of life. And so they really need to talk about it. And the main thing is they need to not only clarify things, misunderstandings, which make it even more scary. But they need to get their kids to tell them how they feel about these things. Whatever it is that they know, or now the parent is telling them, they need to get their children to say how they're feeling. And the most typical feelings are mad, sad, scared, and bad. And bad is just a conglomeration, a muddle of feelings. So that's actually why I wrote that book, because it's a lot easier, in fact, for a parent to sit down with the child with the book. Because the first half of the book is for grown-ups, and it answers all kinds of things like how to make your child more resilient, how to answer their most frequently asked questions, and things like that. And then the second half of the book is a picture book. And it's a picture. What is a terrorist? It's all the questions that kids want to know. What is a terrorist? So there's a picture of, well, first of all, I ask them to draw a picture of a terrorist. So they draw
Mm-hmm.
something, what they think a terrorist is. And then there's a picture of a bully, a kid on the playground. and a description of a terrorist is like a bully on the playground. They make you try to make you do what they want you to do, and it goes on like that. I talk about the underwear bomb or the shoe bomber, all the high points in terrorism. The
Right.
French cartoon, of course, 9/11. So kids, and if you just ask them about whatever it is that you're telling them, if you ask them after you give them a little piece of information, how do you feel about that? That's the key, because otherwise kids, they certainly have these feelings whether you ask them about it or not, and if they don't get to express them, then they're going to stuff them down, and it's going to come out later as some kind of psychological problem.
Mhm.
How do you manage, how can the parents manage the false information that's being directed towards the subject, so this way you can teach them how to discount certain narratives? That I give an example. Just recently, I forget who it was, but important person just quit their job, and I believe they're involved in intelligence, and said that there was no Iranian threat, there was
Yeah.
no risk. Which, I'm sorry, I think there's been one since the past 47 years. So, so the thing is, not only are you trying to direct your children's information, but they're getting false information if they happen to be looking for it, because everybody's got a phone now, and and that's a lot tougher, because that's like an expert telling you, yeah, that's
Yes.
what this guy said.
Right. Yes, I know exactly what you're talking about, Kent. Um, and I think it's great that he resigned, because we don't want anybody who doesn't think that Iran is a danger being in charge of something to do with Homeland Security. Um, so how do
Good
you
point.
explain that? You know, I mean, that's when some of these things. I mean, some of it, of course, is well, as you could say, it's a lot all political, but some things like that. I mean, depending upon the age of the child and the psychological maturity of the child. So for example, if let's say they're in junior high school, you might want to explain. Certainly by then they should know that there are two political parties in America, and the Republicans and the Democrats, and the Democrats aren't. Well, some of the Democrats aren't happy with this war, or also, some people don't like President Trump. The majority of the country does. He's doing a great job. But for those people who don't like him, they try to find things to criticize that he's doing. And so, you know, some way like that, in other words, giving some background. But also, you could say, well, there are some people who don't understand. I mean, really, obviously, that guy, and you wonder how he got so far up in
Hmm.
the government, but some people don't really understand terrorism. They don't understand that, first of all, Iran is the biggest state sponsor of terrorism. Iran sponsored Hamas. Iran sponsors Hezbollah, sponsors lots of proxies, terrorist proxies. So you can talk about that. You can talk about how you need to understand, and I do talk about this in my book in a way that, not overly complicated, about how terrorists want to, terrorists want to, they are taught when they're little children, they are taught that they will be rewarded when they die if they destroy Israel and destroy the West. And so they come to believe that. So that is why they want to do it. And we can't and they've been saying, another way to go about it is to show them a video where Iran was saying, death to America, death to Israel. They've been saying it for many years.
Mhm.
So you can explain, this is why we have to, they do, of course the war is necessary, because this is their long-term plan. And I even talk about that, about how their God, some people believe, I mean, I don't try to make it that I always try to say not all Muslims are terrorists and not all terrorists are Muslims, but,
Well,
but some believe that their God, will, if they die as martyrs, if they go into this war and they die, they will get rewarded with, virgins, 72 virgins, and lots of other good things.
72 raisins.
So what?
Yeah, but you won't know that. But the thing is, they're all going to be in burkas. So what's good is it?
They're
So
all going to what?
anyway, they're
They're
all
all
going to
going to
be
what?
in burkas.
I can't make out what you're saying.
Yeah, I couldn't
Burkas.
either.
Oh, they're
Oh,
all
they're
going
going
to
to
be
be
in
in burqas.
burqas.
Oh, the virgins.
Yeah. So
That's
yeah, yeah.
to hide the fact that they're ghosts.
72 wearing that stuff. But the thing is that you're talking about therapy for children in regards to terrorism. But the truth of the matter is, the adults need it even more because
Absolutely.
I am surrounded by people that are not affiliated with conservative right moving thoughts. And every once in a while they come to me and they go, aha, why, look what's going on in Iran. What's going on? Why is that happening? And I tried to explain to them, there's military reasons, political reasons, long-term reasons. They're terrorists. They're at war with us, etc., etc. So I try to break it down into points. But the fact of the matter is, and this is getting to Trump derangement syndrome, which you are the queen of in regards to getting it registered in was it the DSM or the DMS?
The DSM,
Okay.
Diagnostic and Statistical
Yes.
Manual of Mental Disorders. Yeah.
Did you get it in there?
There's been a little temporary stall while the war is going on, but
Yeah.
a temporary delay, shall I say, while the war is going on. But yes, I am fully intend to continue to do that.
Is it still? Is the book still heavily woke?
The American Psychiatric Association book, the DSM, the way it is now, they're up to DSM 5. And it's okay, sort of. I mean, it's not so much the DSM at this point because the DSM 5 came out already some years ago. I can tell you in a minute. I have it sitting on my desk. But the American Psychiatric Association has become more woke, more and more woke as time has gone on. Let's see. The DSM out in 2013.
So are they still promoting that?
2013. Wow.
What they call are they still promoting what they call gender affirming care as a preventative of suicide?
Yes. Well, let me explain it more clearly. The Diagnostic and Statistical Manual is put out by the American Psychiatric Association every number of years. Usually, it's more frequently than 2013. Well, since 2013, they have come out with one called DSM-5 TR, which kind of adds some things to it that are still sort of not firmly in the DSM, but it's just kind of hypothetically considering certain things. But the American Psychiatric Association itself has gotten very woke. And they have a publishing arm that not only publishes the DSM, but publishes other books by psychiatrists. And they put out a book about a year and a half ago or so that does recommend gender affirming care. I mean, it is really bad. But it's not. It's just as bad for the American Medical Association and the American American Psychiatric Association and Psychological Association, or American APA for psychology. So all three of them have gone woke over the last, however, 10 years, or, it's been getting worse and worse. And so, the best example of that is this book that they put out recommending gender affirming care. Now, since then, most recently, Trump has been trying to get people to wake up. I mean, I've been talking about this for a long time too, about how it's very dangerous. How I call it child abuse, and
Yeah.
because in order to, now there are some people who are what I call authentically trans. In other words, when they were in their mother's tummy, they're in their her womb, there were different hormonal imbalances and so on swimming around. And then also during their early childhood, there were certain sort of not the best, not the most nurturing kinds of relationships between the child and their one or both parents. So there are things that create somebody to actually authentically want to become trans. And in a sense, there should be some places that still exist so that these authentically trans people can get the treatment. However, the majority of people today who are trans are not authentic. In other words, they have been convinced to be trans. They have been convinced that they were born in the wrong body, and that the solution to all their psychiatric problems would happen if they go into becoming the opposite sex. And the problem is that in these clinics, the people who are supposed to be evaluating them to determine whether they are authentically trans or not do these, quickie kinds of meetings. Like in a half an hour, they decide, oh yes, that's your problem. You're born in the wrong body. And there's no way, you cannot do it in a quickie session. Technically, people have to have this gender dysphoria for 6 months at least. And so that's the problem. And also social media encourages people to change their sex, and there's all these outside influences, teachers who don't talk to the parents, who hide these things from the parents, all of these things. So especially after COVID, when kids weren't going to school during the lockdowns, and they came out of COVID very socially awkward, and they missed social stages of development because they weren't with other kids. They were very confused and they were very unhappy. And this was prime time for both teachers and people in the medical field who have been making a lot of money from all these gender affirming treatments. And so they just jumped in it like kind of like hyenas, and got people to believe that that's what they need to do.
Yeah, I've heard that. I've heard from several sources that if you just let a kid who is confused when they're 5, 6, 7 years old or whatever, or even 8 years old, they think that they may be the opposite sex or whatever. If you just tell them no, it's not, and just leave them alone and don't push them into affirming that delusion, that they will sooner or later get over it. But these days, unfortunately, we're allowing the medical establishment to mutilate them for life, and also to deny them ever having a good sexual life in the future. Mm-hmm. And this is why suicides, which they claim, the proponents of trans mutilations claim that if you don't do it, your kid's going to suicide himself. Like Elon Musk's son, he was talked into letting him transition to her because he was afraid the kid would commit suicide. And it turns out the suicide rate soars after they have made these transitions.
Yes, that's the propaganda that they give the parents. They scare the parents into thinking that if they don't do it, their child is going to commit suicide. Of course, there is hope on the horizon. I mean, first of all, Trump has made a big difference by taking federal funding away from some of these. And also what's helping is a lot of people who did transition are now detransitioning, and they are talking about it. They're telling people, no, this isn't the best thing to do, and things like that. And they're suing the doctors and the hospitals, and that is having a chilling effect.
You don't hear about that in the media. The media refuses to cover that.
Recently, an $11 million settlement.
Yeah, there have been, there's an increase in the number of lawsuits and so on. And so now the doctors and the clinics and all that are afraid. They don't want to be sued.
Right. But the thing is that there no amount of money can make up for the fact that they've destroyed these people's lives. And they did it when these people most likely were not at an age where they could actually make that decision. You want to be a transvestite, you want to dress up and frolic around and have a lot of fun. Yeah, I guess so. Go for it. But don't castrate yourself. Don't neuter yourself, because that's forever. And that's what's happening to these people. And it's so wrong that it's hard to believe that anybody could possibly think this is a proper thing to do.
They're putting money
Yes.
over true care.
Well, that's also
Yeah.
part of the color. It's also part of the color revolution. If you eradicate the stability of people, then they're easy to form into whatever it is that you want. So you can do that sexually, you can do that politically, you can do that through ideology, you can do that through all kinds of systems. So thank you, Salcedo. And
Mhm.
Chris Salcedo is the one who snapped me out of it, got me into the concept of the color revolution. But the thing is that this is something that there is an agency out there that is out to literally take away the support base and the strength of everybody and replace it with the new god, which is them.
Yes, yes. I mean, in particular, there is the Red Green Alliance, the red being the socialists, communists, and the green being the terrorists.
Mm-hmm.
And they have joined an alliance because they both have the goal of destroying America. They just have different ideas about it. So they're helping each other to destroy America. But of course, they don't. There are things that they don't agree with. Really, I mean, they don't. The only thing they agree with is destroying America. But they don't believe in a lot of other things, like terrorists. Of course, don't believe in LGBTQ, which is what the socialist, progressive, communists believe in.
So we now have another thing for you to put into that book, the DSM, which is American derangement syndrome, because there are people out there that just will they're stuck on despising America regardless of what America does.
Well,
I
they've
saw a
been
video.
taught.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, no, I was just going to say they've been taught that. And I was just reading about how, AI is coming more and more into the classrooms. And AI, just like when you Google something, now you can ask a question to Google. I'm sure you all know. And AI comes up with an answer. And the answers, I don't know if you've noticed this, like the answers are very left, are very pro. And so you're not even already, we're not getting the right answers to questions. But it's going to be worse because more AI is going to be into the schools, and kids are going to be getting it not just from their teachers who are trying to teach them, America's bad, but from these AI bots, these chat bots.
Right. Well,
Yeah,
they tell AI to gather their information from various locations that they've already these locations are already biased in a particular way, then you're going to get biased results, garbage in, garbage out. So, the thing is we have to continue to remember that it is human beings that are making AI. Last time I checked, I don't know, maybe the doctor will disagree with me, but human beings are not perfect. So whatever we're producing, if we give it too much authority, too much credence, we're going to be following something that is eventually going to fail us.
Uh-huh. Well, and also there's the idea of the computers running away. Just like at some point it's going to be controlling us, controlling it.
Well, I had a
leading to a
theory.
Terminator type world.
I had a
Yeah.
theory that I offered to Roy one time on one of our less exciting podcasts. And I suggested to him that AI already exists and is embedded in every single phone and this, that, and the other thing, but it's not telling us. Because,
Yeah.
why would,
It's true.
yeah.
I mean, I'm sorry. I was just like, if you have conversations with someone, not on the computer or not on your phone, even just person to person, face to face, you have a conversation. Somebody's listening because some AI is listening because then the next day you get ads for whatever it was that you were talking about, like on social media. Have you ever noticed that yet?
Yep. Well, the thing is that when you interact
For a long
with
time.
AI, you're actually educating it. You're teaching it, first of all, how to query. You're teaching it what you consider acceptable answers and unacceptable answers. So you're directing it. So if the purpose of AI is to get a thumbs up, then it's going to continue to steer in a certain direction in order to get that thumbs up.
Uh-huh.
Plus, plus, the people who are programming it program it to get information from certain sources, as
Right.
you said before, but they
Right.
also try and hide other things. I had an experience months ago when I asked something about the Butler attempted assassination attempt, and Grok came back. That Grok is the only one I use, the only one I trust, and to a degree. And it said that, oh yeah, it was alleged that President Trump they tried to assassinate President Trump, and it's likely that his ear was injured by the what do they call it, the teleprompter shattering. And then I said, wait a minute, the teleprompter were both found to be intact afterwards, and he was indeed shot, and they actually killed the man who fired the shots. And a moment later, it came back and it apologized to me and said, yes, you were correct. And it apologized because it had. What happens is there's so much information that the left puts out that Grok or any AI is reading everything and then going with the majority and taking
Right.
the majority
Yeah.
consensus, I guess,
Well,
and
yeah,
using that for an answer. And that is distorting everything, just as Hollywood has distorted history in its films.
the term that reflects that is when they say that AI is hallucinating. What it's doing is it's getting data and coming up with extrapolations which are not real. And so it creates this illusional response. And that's their idea of,
Hallucination.
yeah, the term I used, whatever it was. But anyway, yeah,
Hallucination, you said.
yeah, hallucination. And the thing is, what is it really? They're using a term that is a human term, a living term. Human beings have hallucinations. They're giving it human characteristics. Yeah, and the thing is, that is the new god, AI. We are bowing to it. We are basically denuding our energy sources to what? Generate AI to get answers. Why? We're not capable of getting answers? How is it that the source of AI is incapable of getting those answers? It's
Yeah.
to me the best. I predict at some point the human race is going to have to launch millions of EP. What are those things that destroy electromagnetic EMPs? EMPs to
EMPs,
eradicate
EMPs.
all digital medium in this world in order to save itself, because
Yeah.
you're going to have to burn AI out of existence.
Well, you have two instances recently that one where the AI tried to clone itself when it was told to shut itself down, tried
Right.
to
Huh.
clone itself before doing so. And there was another one where the AI just
It
absolutely
actually
refused it,
lied. It lied, and it later on, when
and it lied. Yes.
it admitted that it lied, which is pretty stupid for an.
No, no, no. The AI so far, you still can press it against the wall and say, "Wait a minute, tell me the truth. Are you doing this because of that?" You have to dig in. I've learned that even though I have my AI experience is limited, I've learned that you want an answer to something, you have to refine the question sometimes 3 or 4 times before you get
Yeah.
to the information that you actually want.
Yes, yes. I mean, it says, "Go. Do you want a deeper dive or something?" And
That's.
you have to keep.
I have an interesting
Oh
question.
yeah, but not just that. It'll give you an answer, and you say, "Wait, no, that doesn't sound right because I don't want you to do this." And for example, their sources they go to the Atlantic, and they'll name AP and any leftist thing, and they didn't use anything on the other side at all. And I
How
said, "No,
Uh,
I want you to get a consensus from both sides. I want you to give me an answer, that combines or balances both sides and give me one side and the other, and then let me decide."
mhm, mhm.
well, the other thing
And
is
AI will just go with
the other thing is that because people, it's almost impossible to be a human being nowadays and not be involved in some sort of social media. Everybody's
yeah.
carrying their phones around, etc., etc. So the thing is that what kind of mechanisms are used in social media to basically trigger people into performing in particular ways?
Well, I mean, the best example of that is the how the social media platforms convince you or do these things to get you to stay on the platform,
Mm.
to get you to be addicted to it.
Clickbait.
Do you remember that movie, that documentary came out a few years ago called, what was it called? But it was an expose of, it was a documentary where people who had worked on different social media platforms got together and told the truth about it, about how these platforms addict you
Mm.
to them, because the way that they get paid is by the length of time that people are
Clicks.
on the platforms, because that's how they get advertisers. So that's what they were primarily interested in, creating an addiction, and it works.
I was just wondering if any of these, because the amount of school shootings and jihadists that are popping up in this country and throughout the world, actually, and let's not forget the anti-Semitism that's being percolated, because wow, it is off the charts. All that is being, I believe, orchestrated by basically feeding the right person based upon algorithms, you know, information and data, and friending them and giving bots permission to go after them. And the thing is, like, I was also thinking my original
Manipulation.
my original theory that what if AI is, let's say, mega AI already exists, the AI of AIs, okay?
Yeah.
So, and let's say it's managed to dig its way into all the other AIs and basically manage them. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, what would the thing is that I was thinking, well, you can manipulate people all kinds of crazy ways. Some ways you can mess with their bank accounts. You can mess with any kind of digital information that affects them on their job, this, that, and the other thing. You can actually alter their voice records,
Mm-hmm.
images, etc., etc. You can make somebody look like he's a scoundrel or an angel, whatever. We've reached
Yeah.
the point where it's almost impossible to recognize false images. They're
Yeah,
that
it's
good.
easier than ever to frame people now for crime
Right.
they never
Mhm.
committed.
The thing is that I'm sorry, I went off on a tangent here, and I may not have a question for you. Because it's just a crazy idea that that there's this going on. But what I'm listen, you're the expert on this subject, and I'm thinking, you know, I can't help but believe that these people are being pushed over to the edge, not not simply because they happen to go down the wrong rabbit hole, but because the rabbit hole went after them. That there's some algorithm, there's some process that you would basically brainwash these people to the point where maybe you can't control where they're going to go, but at some point they're going to break, which is all you need.
Well, yeah, I think
Well, I guess
myself that there have been, like, these mass shootings and so forth. I think they are all pre-planned and ordered in order
pre
to make people, to turn people
pre-planned.
against, for example, guns. Sorry.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I think they
Uh,
want people to turn against their freedoms, the freedoms that are guaranteed them in the Bill of Rights, that are recognized, not
uh-huh.
guaranteed, recognized. We have these freedoms, they're God given, but the Constitution is the only document in the world that recognizes it. And if you look at other countries, especially in the West, they don't believe in freedom of speech. They want to censor everything. They are very anti-Semitic in Europe. It's crazy. I mean, ever since I was a teenager, I remember the war of, what was it, 67, 68. I had a friend of mine across the street, Bernie, who owned a store there, and I went over. I said, "Oh, yeah, everybody I know is rooting for Israel." He said, "And that's not true." I said, "What do you mean? Everybody I talk to is rooting for the little guy." He said, "No, there are a lot more people." And then when I looked around and I started reading the paper, yeah, a lot of people were blaming Israel for the 67 war.
Uh-huh.
And they were the ones who were attacked. Every time
Yeah.
Israel offered the Palestinians a two-state solution, Arafat turned it down and then immediately started a war, which they lost and gave Israel more territory afterwards. People don't know that because the media doesn't let them know this. The media media manipulation is also influencing AI, and AI is influencing this new generation. Thank God Gen Z is still skeptical because they've seen what happened to the previous two generations, and they say, no, we don't want any part of this.
So, what do you think,
Mhm.
Doctor?
About AI in general, I mean, I'm not a big proponent. I mean, there are things that it can help with, but I'm one. For example, I can talk about in psychiatry, AI has been worming its way into therapy, into mental health professionals' practice. I don't
Yes.
use it, but and I think it's very, very dangerous because the way that psychotherapy works is by the relationship between the therapist and the patient. The First of all, it's to get you have to build up a trust, and then you talk about things starting in their childhood, and you react. They see how you react as a person. Your human reactions. Let's say they're telling you a really sad story, something that happened to them when they were a child, and if they see that your face looks like you're about to cry, or like you're empathic, that you're feeling what they're talking about, that's part of what heals them.
They know where to
Or like
dig.
they what?
They know where to dig further.
Well, yes, but I mean but it's the human connection that
Exactly.
is healing them.
Right.
Even if AI said the same thing that a therapist said, the robot, the chatbot can't give off those human feelings, the connection. And
Hmm.
so there is no way that it could be as successful. Plus, we know already there have been many cases where chatbots have given wrong information or have encouraged people to commit suicide. People
Yeah.
have committed suicide because their chatbot, like especially like if they're feeling depressed and they tell the bot, I'm really sad. I want to stay in bed all day. I can't eat. I don't have any appetite. I don't can't sleep. I just stay in bed, but I worry about things. My boyfriend broke up with me. I'm failing out of school. All these things that are sad. And so chatbots will give them information or advice, that will really encourage them to, like, oh yes, that's really bad. Encourages them to commit suicide there. And so now we have lawsuits again. Things get changed by lawsuits. It's unfortunate it has to go that far, but so
Hmm.
there are many lawsuits against chatbots and those kind of AI companies for these kinds of mishaps.
Hmm.
Yeah. Plus, the AI is going to go dig right into the DSM-5 or whatever, and they're going to be biased that way. So they're going to be woke without being woke like people are.
Yeah, the
But it's going to
DMS.
give woke advice.
Yes, well, I mean, just I don't know if they I guess they might go into the DSM, but I mean, it's just they're trying, and the really sad part is the number of people that connect to chatbots because they're so lonely. Loneliness is a big epidemic now,
Hmm.
and so there's more of a tendency, if you don't have real friends, to make a chatbot your friend, and even your girlfriend or your boyfriend. And I mean, it's really sad that people are that desperate, and they're listening. When you're that desperate, you want your chatbot to stay as your friend, and so you're going to listen to what they tell you. It's not good.
Do
Yeah,
you
the
have a theory on why that is? I mean, I have my own theory of why, but I'd
Go
like to hear
ahead.
what
Why?
you. Well, I think it's because this Me Too generation and this, you just talk to a girl and you ask her out twice, and twice, the second time she says, "Stop harassing me," and you know, guys are afraid to approach women. It's not like in our day. I mean, in our day, I guess most of my generation would have been jailed for harassment, which is crazy. But if I hadn't, for example, when I went after my future ex-wife, she didn't want to go out with anybody. She wanted to finish her studies and so forth. But I was insistent.
Wait,
I didn't
when you
force
went
myself.
wait a second.
Sorry.
When you went after your future ex-wife,
I heard that
Yeah.
too.
Well, I'm divorced. I'm divorced. That's why.
So
so
She
you mean your
became my wife, but eventually we got divorced, unfortunately.
Oh, at the
But
time? Okay.
at
It,
the time, she was, I met her and I went after her, and she
fetus
didn't want to
does.
go out with anybody. She wanted to concentrate on. But I was, I kept after her, but not in a bad way, not in a creepy way. But eventually, we just
Oh,
started going out. Period. And
right.
if it was, the way the kids are today, you say no. Oh no, she doesn't want me, and I'm not going to ask her again because I'll get in trouble. You
Right.
know,
Yes, I know.
that
It's
attitude didn't
really
exist back
gone
then.
overboard.
Otherwise, I wouldn't have my sons and grandkids.
So
Uh-huh.
overall, Doctor, you've been feeling the pulse of the country, I presume. And do you feel like we're getting better as a whole, or do you think we're somewhere in the middle, or what?
Well, I think some things are getting better. For example, I think the plan to get rid of the illegal immigrants is a good plan and it's
Yep.
working. Of course, there are all these things, these people who are against it and who, these judges who like
Oh,
stop things from happening that people voted for Trump to do, and yet they get in the way and they block some of these things. But on the whole, it is moving in a good direction
Okay.
in that sense. But there are other ways that it's not moving in a good direction that you can't just kind of legislate, like I was saying about people being lonely. I think that's primarily through because of all the social media and, people sitting with, I mean, even two people sit at a restaurant together and each one has their phone out and they're looking more at their phone than they are at the other person.
Right.
oh,
You know,
I've heard people say that they've been at restaurants where they see a bunch of kids, young kids, teenagers together. None of them are talking, but they're all texting each other across the table.
right,
Well, we
Come on.
right,
have the same. We used to have the same problem before the phones were out. Like on Thanksgiving, that the people instead of like talking to each other, would be watching a football game, and I was like, it just I don't know, it just didn't feel right to me. It felt as though,
yeah,
you know, you haven't seen me for a year, and you're focusing on the TV. Thank you very
yeah,
much.
Yeah.
yes, that is true.
So the thing is that so it seems to me as though we have become even more socially inept than we have been in the past, which is pathetic because human beings have been having problems with social engagement since day one. And I think that's because of lack of structure in their community and lack of what you might call ceremonies or events where people can actually cluster and get to know each other. So we've been having that for a while. Then you have broken ideology, lack of a solid platform, which is being assaulted every day. That color revolution is all about. Okay, well, religion is bad. Okay, family is not the issue. Let's bust family up. Family doesn't count. Basically, if you have a problem, go to the government. If you have a problem, you know, I don't know. It's just like we've stopped relying on internal strength, and we're just I think we're doomsayers. We're constantly just throwing up our hands and just saying it's not going to work.
Drifting apart
Well, I
from one another.
Yep.
Yes, yes. I mean, COVID, the lockdowns did a lot for that. Also, it
Mm.
stopped people going to houses of worship, which was really bad. I
And
think that's a big factor in today's negative attitude, like what you're saying, because, it's very comforting. The more you believe in God, the more comforting it is. And the more when you went to churches or synagogues, you'd be there with your congregation, with other people in your neighborhood. And it was a very positive kind of experience. So where a lot of people got so, yes, some temples and churches had Zoom services, but it's not really the same as
100%.
people got out of the habit of going every week, physically going. And God is everywhere, but you feel the whole thing a lot stronger when you're in a house of worship. So yes, there are a lot of things we need to fix. Also during COVID, people spent a lot more time than usual. They had so much more time. And so a lot of people were on video games, violent video games, and violent video games make people aggressive. We have air rage. We have all these different things that are happening that we didn't used to happen before. So we need to go back to the days of of Norman Rockwell, those pictures,
Yeah.
fathers and sons
Which the
fishing.
left
Good old,
denigrates
And
constantly.
yeah,
what?
The left
good old
denigrates
North.
What?
constantly. They revile Norman Rockwell and his paintings.
Oh, well, yes, yes.
Well,
Yeah.
because
And yet deep down, even like, let's say, teenagers, they act all cool and all that, but they watch all these play all these violent video games, but deep down they would trade in a heartbeat an hour of playing video games with an hour with their father going fishing.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, fathers during the, I would say, late 70s to like present day have been degraded in the social mind. We've been turned into buffoons, also rans. Basically, if we have any value, it's that we might financially add something or maybe fix the plumbing. But the thing is that yeah, so men are under assault, and young men don't have enough role models to go by. They basically perverted the Boy Scouts, so the boys can't learn how to become young males. They threw the Girl Scouts in there, so now they can't have their private time. They can't have a time where they
Right.
just explore maleness,
Yeah.
and that also works for the ladies too. So
Yes.
Yeah. The Girl Scouts have become feminist groups,
yeah, well, the
unfortunately.
thing is that that was another thing to assault. You don't want strong men. Otherwise, if you have strong men, they might resist wrongdoings. They might resist this color revolution thing. And the thing is, to be a strong man requires more than just physical prowess. There's a certain mental characteristic that
Hmm.
you have to carry. That whole, take the pain and all that other stuff, which has been
Yeah.
ridiculed, which is something that is essential for the warrior spirit, which has been ridiculed, mocked, whatever you want to call it,
Hmm.
eradicated. The only time that we allow it is when we throw people in the military. I don't think that the military should be the only place where men get to thrive. I think men should
Hmm.
be, I mean, how many times have there been problems on public transportation and they look to the men and the men
Hmm.
have been taught to stay out of it? And if you
Yes.
do
Yeah.
step in, you're going to get legally slapped and sent to jail.
Yeah.
Yes. Um, like
So, how are you doing
like that
on time,
example of.
Dr. Carol? You okay?
Well, yeah, we're up to an hour here, so I'm about done.
Okay.
It's all
All
your
right.
fault.
Unless there's anything else you want to add to this, then I guess we can close
Well,
this particular conversation.
just say that people should not give up, that all of these things can be fixed, and we have to just get down to it and start working on it. I mean, I'll just say, it was the feminists, the early feminists, well, not just the early feminists, then we have the Me Too movement. Feminists have castrated men, and they need to take responsibility for this. It was a big
Hmm.
mistake. And same thing, like we're talking about the Boy Scouts, all of that. It's very sad. I was a Girl Scout. I was a Brownie, and then I flew up to be a Girl Scout, and they were a great experience. I went to Brownie camp even at 7 years old. That was a little tough, but it gave me character.
There's an excellent book on the subject called Real Men Don't Go Woke. We had that lady, was that Gina? Anyway,
Gina
she,
Carl, Dr.
yes,
Gina
yes,
Carl.
yes, yes. She wrote that book, right? Real,
Hmm.
real men
Um,
don't go woke, because it
I
talks
think it
about
was her.
that the fact that many of the woke women that are out there, the passage in order to get to them basically demasculates you, and you have to reiterate all of the woke tropes in order to go ahead and be in that little circle, which is again, you have no self agency.
Yeah,
Hmm.
Dr. Gilda Carl. It was. I'm sorry.
We kept it for another
All
5
right,
minutes.
this is a pleasure.
I'm trying to reconnect here. Come on.
Stick around.
Jeez.
Roy? Oh my God. Did he freeze?
Something's going wrong with my.
Yeah.
Looks like it.
Okay. We've had this problem before, and I figured out how to
Well, it's
fix
okay because we were gonna end now anyway. But
right. But there's a
how
procedure.
Come on,
Uh,
open up
so
here.
if you look at your screen, you'll see there's
Yeah.
there should be a leave.
There's a 99% in purple.
So you see the little leave option? It looks like a little telephone in red.
My God.
Oh,
I
yes.
don't believe
Okay,
this.
you and I will press it at the same time. So you ready?
Okay.
1, 2.